winter meeting of the Greensboro Historical Society on Sunday, March 4th, 2007 in Fellowship Hall. The subject is Shaping Lives, 100 Years of Grange in Greensboro and the Last Century of 4-H.
And many, many years, actually it's 100 years of the 4-H. We are celebrating lots of things, and I'm Jenny Stoner, I'm president of the Greensboro Historical Society, and we're very, very glad to have you here. We call this program Shaping Lives. And when you think about it, and what you're going to see, some of you have already been looking at the displays and seen your own pictures and your own things you have been involved in, and also the Everything 4-H that is currently a very active group, that the Grange and the 4-H have been very, very important elements in shaping the lives of the people of this community. This is the 100th anniversary of the Greensboro Grange, and we're going to hear about its rich heritage. The 4-H Club has a proud history in the life of rural Vermonters, and we have the special opportunity to learn about the new directions of today's very active Everything 4-H. On our panel, we're most fortunate to have Elaine Dunbar, who will speak about the Grange. She's been very active and been the master or the president of the Caspian Lake Grange and also of the area, the Pomona Grange. She will speak about the Grange first. Lewis Hill will speak about the boys 4-H. Dorothy Ling about the girls 4-H. And then Louise Calderwood will give an introduction, and members of the Everything 4-H will speak for themselves. At the concluding segment of each program, what will come, and each segment will have a presentation at the beginning, and then a chance for conversation and memories of people who participated, and everybody, and then we'll go on to the next, so that we have questions and answers about each segment as we go along. Now, can you all see if we're seated? Does that work all right? Before turning it over to Elaine, I've been asked to give some background about the Grange. Shortly after the Civil War, in 1866, Oliver Hudson Kelley, who was regarded as the founder of the Grange movement, made a survey of the farm conditions in the South for the recently formed Department of Agriculture. He observed that the farmers were unhappy with the railroads and the other services, which made them feel at the mercy of the powerful business interests. And they could charge whatever they wanted, and the farmers had no say in it. And he felt this was not an acceptable way to go. And so decided that farmers needed to organize. He conceived the idea that fraternal organization could change this. And that it would be composed of farmers from all sections of the country and would help heal the scars that were left by the Civil War, as well as improve the economic and social conditions of the farm population. So when he returned to Washington, Kelley communicated his plans to 6 friends and enlisted their support. On December 4th, 1867, the National Grange was formally organized with the official name of the Patrons of Husbandry. How's that? That's not one I imagine you use very often anymore. The organization was influenced by the Masons and but modeled after the old English granges or farms. It was built upon democratic expression and organization, whereby each member has the opportunity to help formulate the community, state, and national policies, with a full membership offered to any man or woman 13 and a half years of age or older. In fact, the Grange was the first organization in America to admit women to full membership on an equal basis with men. The officers were given titles found in the structure of the English Grange. The officers were the master, overseer, steward, assistant steward, and lady assistant steward. So there was a little distinction. Chaplain, lecturer who arranged programs, and secretary and treasurer. The themes were used to develop the ritual for the ceremonies that incorporate the agricultural faith in God and community, in the country. Meetings were held in the Grange Hall, and before long it became referred to as the Grange. The Grange has 7 degrees, 4 of them in the community, 5th known as Pomona, or the area, and then the 6th is the state, and the 7th is the national. And Elaine has been president, or the master, for both the local and the area. The Grange has long been active in forming public policy, and this was a real revelation to me. They lobbied nationally for government control over the railroads, because previously each owner of the railroad could decide for himself what to charge and what the rates would be, so it was a regulated rates. For interstate commerce, they helped form the Extension Service, which educated farmers in better conservation and animal breeding, and seed and selection practices. They were leaders in starting rural-free delivery, so that farmers wouldn't have to go to town to get their mail, and the Farm Credit Organization that provided farmers with cheaper credit than the banks offered. Locally, farmers formed cooperatives to buy seeds, seeds and fertilizer wholesalers, and to better market their milk and livestock. And now, with this introduction of the overview, Elaine will tell you about the Caspian Lake Grange, which is celebrating 100 years.
The Greensboro Historical Society theme this year is Shaping Lives, and Caspian Lake Grange fulfills that in many ways. It was organized 100 years ago when there was no electricity, telephone, radios, televisions, and automobiles or social life except the church for the farm families. By 1907, Greensboro was ready for the Grange. In fact, a Caspian Lake Grange was organized much earlier in 1876, but there is no record of how long it lasted. A Greensboro Valley Grange was active between 1910 and 1916. The present Caspian Lake Grange was organized June 25, 1907. The 382nd Grange in the state of Vermont. C.J. Bell of Walden, who became Vermont's governor in 1916, organized the new Grange in the former town hall in the V of the road in front of the present town hall, with 44 members signing in. 2 weeks later, 43 more members joined, and by 1916 there was a peak membership of 131, a long way from 54 at the 75th anniversary and 25 now. Meetings were held each second and fourth Thursday, and for many years they were held in the town hall. About 1910, Myron Kinney offered a building lot to the Grange, providing they would never hold dances, a promise the Grange refused to make. A few years later, Mr. Kinney decided that the Grangers didn't dance much, and they fought unconditionally. The Grange purchased the town hall for $310 in 1913, the year the present town hall was opened as an elementary school and high school. The Grange moved the building across the street to the Kinney lot. And just recently we had some work done the last few years, and one of the people who worked on the hall came up to me and said to me, "Has that building ever been moved?" And I said, "Yeah." "Oh, good," he says, "because the stringers are going the wrong way." A kitchen was completed in the basement in 1916, and it was voted to install electricity in 1917. Much volunteer labor and donation of much lumber and other materials made it all possible. Gradually, furniture was obtained, and when the Greensboro Valley Grange surrendered their charter, their regalia and implements were given to Caspian Lake Grange. New sashes were purchased and dedicated by the state master in 1978. Yearly program books were made out from the first with programs scheduled for each meeting. There were readings, songs, and often papers of discussions that required homework. Many were on improvements of the Grange, of the farm, or town. Debates were held on such topics as, which is it better, for a man to get up early or for one who is wide awake? Or more seriously, all nations should adopt a policy of free trade, or a vocational education is more valuable than a cultural one. There were neighbors' nights and open meetings, legislative nights and mystery rights, meetings led by officers and committee chairs as agriculture or youth nights. Roll calls were amusing and serious. As time went on, there were travel talks, movies, outside speakers on special topics, ones by 4-H members and later the Girl Scouts. Degrees were usually given at least once a year. For a time, Caspian Lake Grange had a ladies' degree team with marches and drills that went to other Granges, led by Mrs. Nellie Gebby. Program booklets usually listed officers and members. In 1907, there were 75 members. In 1917, 131, and in 1936, 90. In 1990, 44, and now 25. As with most groups, the Grange had to make money. The dues each member paid didn't meet subordinate dues to the state and expenses of the group and the building. From the first, meals were served usually at 10 cents a plate, but going up as prices increased. Strawberry suppers were held in the summer and others were served. For several years, United Farmers' annual suppers were catered meals, were put on for Greensboro High alumni banquet and the town meeting dinners. Sometimes there were fairs and food sales. In early years, the Nellie Guild players put on plays, and the Grange received a percentage. Whist card parties have been popular at different times. Dances were sponsored several summers, and at times profits were shared with Greensboro nursing home. Now the hall is used by other groups with only donations and the cleanup fee required. The Grange is a legislative group, and each Grange is invited to present resolutions to the state Grange. If approved at the annual state session, they go to the state legislature. These have included urging against polio in 1912 and against coloring in 1951, favoring the repeal of daylight time in 1919, and asking for either daylight or standard to be used throughout the state in 1947. One resolution went to the federal government urging action to continue support of local health centers. Grange influence has improved regulations of railroad rates and made their schedules better, brought in rural-free delivery, the extension service, and farm credit. Grange is also noted for serving the community, and in April, which is Grange Month, non-members are awarded community service awards. Some of these have included, but not limited to, because I'm sure I've missed somebody somewhere. Would you raise your hand if you are here today, please? Lois and Nancy Hill, Donald and Madeline Gebby, Donald and Laura Drown, Everett Young, Henry Merrill, the Greensboro Fire Department. More recent awards went to Cheryl Lumsden, Ellen Kerr, Lorraine and Harold Tallman, Bill Eisner, the Rescue Squad, Leona Collier, Shirley King, Bert Stone, Wilhelmina Smith, I know she's here, Helen Ambrosini, the Greensboro Health Center, and Kim and Peg Elgomar. And the last one that we gave last year went to Teresa Snow of the Salvation Farms. Pomona Grange gives awards to both non-members and to members, and in 1989, one was given to Hazel Guile. And there have been several others, hopefully, who have received them. I think Dorothy has. Pomona, I think so. Caspian Lake Grange has had a policy of sharing with others from the first Fernhattan Homes, mentioned in 1908, was one of the first. Others have been helped, including a Family in Trouble, Children's Aid, and Red Cross drives. In 1940, the community service contests began and bigger projects developed. In 1968 to 1987, Caspian Lake Grange placed in 7 yearly state contests with 4 firsts, 2 seconds, and 1 third. Top winners received money. These projects included helping begin the Caspian Lake Area Special Education School, improvements of public beach, graveling the shore, building bathhouses, and providing rafts and tables, as well as sponsoring swimming classes for a time. The school hall lunch was sponsored and supported for 12 years. Roadsides were made and put up during the National Bicentennial in 76, and the last ones replaced later. Some of them were replaced several times. They got to be good collector's items, I guess. Rooms in the former nursing home were papered and painted. Also, sewing was done for the nursing home, and at one time, people went down every Saturday and served snack in the morning to people there. When there was a threat to tear down the town hall building and build a town office in its place, Grange members were active in preventing this and in restoring the building. Grange has also worked on several Greensboro cemeteries, including the White, the Baker, the Mitchell, and the Village cemeteries. And if somebody knows afterwards, after the meeting, would they tell me where the Baker one was? Because I missed out on that. We also had a Waterbury project, and in that case, what we did was they named a person at the state hospital, and it was our job to see that that person was recognized with a card or a letter every month of the year, as well as special times such as birthdays and Christmas and so forth. The Grange was the first fraternal group to offer equal membership to women. The first master and lecturer were Mr. and Mrs. B.H. Fairbanks. In 1920, Mrs. Millie Gebbe was the first woman to serve as master, and during her 3 years of service, all officers were women except one. During the 100 years, the Grange has developed contests to challenge members to win prizes. The lecturer offers several contests: photography, talent, skit writing, and performance of skits, writing poetry, and book descriptions. The women's activities or home economics chair has contests in sewing, embroidery, knitting, crocheting, and baking, and the youth chair offers a variety of activities. There is a junior Grange in some towns with training and leading meetings and providing many activities. Several subordinate Granges unite into the Pomona Grange, with Caspian Lake Grange belonging to Hazen Road, Pomona, number 15, with Caledonia Grange, number 9 of East Hardwick. They were the 9th Grange in the state of Vermont, and Memorial Grange in Morrisville, up until 2006. Now the Pomona has been reorganized with fewer Pomonas and covering a larger area. Caspian Lake Grange belongs to Kingdom Pomona number 35, which covers much of the Northeast Kingdom. I should say right here that I need to make a correction in what Mrs. Stoner said. I never was officially the master of Caspian Lake Grange. I did run it, but I wasn't the official master. But as you all know, in small towns, sometimes somebody gets sick and somebody else has to do the job. And there were times like that. I did, however, serve as master of Pomona. Grangers have been awarded Rangers have been awarded for long terms of membership. At the 25th anniversary, Silver Star certificates were given to 16 members, and at the 50th, Golden Sheaf certificates went to Mr. and Mrs. P.N. Allen, Mr. and Mrs. John Barrington, Mr. and Mrs. Elsa Gebbe, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Lapierre, and Mrs. B.M. Lilly. At the 70th anniversary, Mrs. Flora Lapierre was honored as the only living charter member. A 50-year pin and certificate went to Will Massey, and a 25 one to Philip Gray. In 1990, Marjorie Lapierre and Raymond Mercier became 50-year members, and Aaron Lapierre and Robert Wilson 60-year members. Dorothy Blaine became a 50-year member in 1996. At the 100th anniversary of Caspian Lake Grange, no more than 2 or 3 members are eligible for the 50-year certificate, and I believe one of those is Mary Merrill, who's with us today. Caspian Lake Grange has had many good years since 1907. It brightened the lives of lonely farm families, helped them learn public speaking, and helped them to lead meetings as well as to gain knowledge of many things. The biggest advantage these families had was to find a social life that had been limited by lack of electricity, telephones, radios, televisions, and automobiles. Now that these are all available, it works in reverse. It is harder to find new members with all the other things available. Also, since the 75th anniversary, Caspian Lake Grange has lost many 50-year members one by one. Marjorie and Arlen Lapierre, Erwin and Beatrice White, Robert and Harriet Wilson, and Raymond Mercier, and also the younger Erwin White Jr. Caspian Lake Grange has some faithful new members now and also people interested in joining. In the past, only loyal members willing to take responsibility made that 100 years possible, and our Grange still has hope for the future. This summer, as we celebrate our 100th year, we hope to have you all visit our display of historical things from the last 100 years, including such things as old needlework, old needlework patterns, old tools, and old Grange memorabilia, which is on here. This year we have a special project which covers the entire state of Vermont, and this is for the community service one. And I have this with me today, and I'll put it over there. And what it is it's a telephone number that people can take, and if you know of someone who is in danger of being hungry, I don't mean just I'd like a snack because it's not quite supper time. I mean hungry. This is a helpline that you can access, and they will get help for food stamps for people. And I'm sure you can call that number, whether it's for an older person or a younger person. It doesn't make any difference. But hunger in Vermont is a problem which we have been working on. And I forgot something. I told Peg that before I gave my speech that we would have the flag salute and a Star-Spangled Banner. And of course I forgot. My apologies, Peg. So if you will all stand and join me in the flag salute.
Well, this is the way you start your meetings.
Normally we start the meetings this way, yes. With the flag salute, we have the Bible up on the table. And I think, knowing how the flags are, I have that setting all right once. I probably shouldn't have done that, but okay. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, this is a real test for us. For us here.
For the
We hope you all look at our display on the table. It covers 100 years, and we'll have even more things in the summer, so we hope you will join us then. It is tentatively scheduled for whichever weekend Greensboro has their 4th of July celebration. I don't know that yet, so I can't tell you which days it will be. But I hope that you will also be interested in joining the Grange, and that any time that you are interested, give me a call. I would be glad to talk with you. I'd be glad to give you an application. And we are always looking for new members. And anybody that's over 14, and if you aren't quite 14, I know who to go and get special permission so you can join. There are times in life it's who you know. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Now is the time for a little sharing, and I'd like to open that with sharing some memories of Madeline Gabby, whom I had the pleasure of sitting next to at a luncheon at Christmas time. And she said that when she and her husband were a young married couple, the Grange was their social life. There were meetings, I believe it was every other week, and they had dinners, and they were on the dinner committee, and they and 2 other couples were the ones who helped set it up and did dishes, and they had music and programs, and the Grange really was very, very important to their lives. And that's where their best friends were, and they always got together. But I hope there's somebody else here who's got something. Janet?
I remember going to a box supper party where the women who made the box lunch decorated it, and they bought it, and then we played whist afterwards. I think I probably was 12 at the time. And Barney Allen was, to me, about 104 on my box. But it was a fun evening.
Are there any other reminiscences of
I'm Margaret Gillette, but my parents were years, and I joined when I was 13, I guess. I couldn't remember when I joined, but I'm still a member, and I come to these meetings occasionally. I know my parents were busy every other week because every Thursday night they went to Grange. All the refreshments were always the kinds that farmers have. You know, you didn't get a cookie and a glass of coffee. It was a sandwich or sandwiches and cake, or, you know, just sort of almost a meal. We got to eat the leftovers. It also helped at the dances. They sponsored square dances at the town hall, and we sold soda and that kind of thing at the square dances. So I remember doing that. And I know my parents worked in the cemeteries, and many of the projects she talked about that I got to help with just because I was part of the family. So good thing to do.
Are there any other memories or stories of the Grange? Dorothy?
I don't want to steal something. It's been a grand way to start out because you learn a lot of things that come natural to you, like speaking and all that sort of thing. So I'm awfully glad I've had Grange in the experience.
So when I read about all the legislative stuff, it made me think of the League of Women Voters. That just is, the same kind of learning about the issues and getting very well informed and then making a difference.
A moment from the Grange, what the Grange has done for me. I didn't know the Grange sponsored extension service by which I teach at the North Country Career Center, and I teach art programs. So in 1917, the Smith Hughes Act directly comes from your hard work. Thank you.
The community has been impacted in ways we're not aware of. And so now let's turn to the 4-H clubs. The Grange was organized for the adults, and the 4-H was organized for the youth initially. Evolved from numerous rural clubs formed in the late 1800s to give farm youth some social and learning skills. and that the boys and girls and scouts and similar groups enjoyed in other places. It was formally organized and adopted the familiar four-leaf clover emblem in 1907. So that this really is a centennial year. In the Historical Society, we've done a lot of centennials and bicentennials, and we didn't realize that there's a centennial across the thing. And the 4-H's stand for?
I touch my hat to clear thinking.
There it is.
Hands, large, serve.
Head, heart, hands, and health. I've got a little background on the Orleans County 4-H before Louis and Dorothy to give us on the local area. In 1919, 4-H work was started in Orleans County by Miss Marjorie Luce, who was a member of the Extension Service. So again, it started by someone in the government. And for the next 2 years, Mr. Milo Bacon was hired to start 4-H clubs in the area. At the end of the first year, he had started not 1 or 2, but 27 clubs, and a total of 393 members. 4-H was already important in building future citizens and young people, and were enthusiastic about joining. And to be able to continue the work, a campaign was organized for fundraising, so that in 1925, a permanent full-time person, Miss Flora Coates, it is right, okay, was hired as the first Orleans County 4-H agent. And towns voted to support the 4-H club work at town meetings, and it expanded rapidly. There was a junior council of outstanding 4-H members who were at least 15 and had 5 years of 4-H club experience. The council worked with the county agent for develop activities, and one activity they decided it needed was a camp. So for 6 years, there was a week-long camp at different locations. 1 year it was at Caspian Lake, 1 year was at Glympha-Magog, another year it was at Brownington. By 1930, the work of the camp was considered so important, they said, we need a permanent camp. And Brownington said, we'll offer to have a regular site here. But when Derby heard about it, they said, we want it. And the town officers offered a lease of land at Salem Pond with 100 feet of shorefront, and they offered to build a road to the site so that they could put up buildings. And this was voted at the town meeting. And after the town meeting, the 4-Hers began making plans. The junior council pledged to raise, now this was 1930. And you know what happened in 1929? It was stock crash. So 1930 was the beginning of the Depression. And yet they pledged to raise $1,000, which was a lot of money, and which they thought would be enough. And club members and leaders and interested citizens spent hours cleaning the land and getting ready and raising money with sales and suppers and other fundraising activities. And they raised $1,000, and guess what? Discovered that wasn't quite enough. They needed $2,000, and so they raised the $2,000. And in the end, it was all raised. The building was constructed with a combination of paid carpenters and lots of volunteering of labor and materials. And the camp was opened July 27th, 1932, ready for many, many years of use. So with a full-time enthusiastic county agent, Flora Coates, and connections to both the state and national 4-H clubs, the county 4-H clubs was established and flourishing. And Greensboro 4-H started in the 1920s, and many local youths involved. Some older people may remember Flora Coates, the first agent, and her tremendous energy in organizing. And now I'm going to turn it over to Louis Hill, and he's going to tell us about the boys 4-H and all his involvement with it.
I never was in 4-H, but my older brother and sister were in the 20s with Flora Coates, and she really was a remarkable person. But my first memory, because they met at the houses and used to meet at hours sometime, I was about 6 or 7. One time she brought down a movie, and she ran it off her car battery. Nobody had electricity, and they had to crank it by hand. It was pretty jerky, but nobody had ever seen a movie before, so it was really pretty impressive. So this is one thing that 4-H did. It was sponsored by the Extension Service, who had not had very good luck convincing farmers to change their agricultural methods. The guys hadn't really changed farming much for 50 years, and they really didn't intend to. So the Extension Service thought maybe if they worked with the kids, they could accomplish something. And so they did this. So they took them around, showed them good farms where they were doing things, and hopefully that they would come back and get their parents interested in it. I got the 4-H club because James Daly, who was a minister here, some of you may remember him, about 5 boys went to him one time and asked him to help him start a club. So he did, but he didn't know anything about 4-H either, but it got off to a kind of shaky start. But Mrs. Alice Leonard was an agent then, and but unfortunately James had to leave in a little while, so he asked me if I would take it. Of course, I really didn't want to. I didn't know anything about it. But I agreed to. And then I had to face these 5 guys one meeting with none of us really knowing what we were doing, what it was all about. But Mrs. Leonard was wonderful. She began by bringing me down a stack of 4-H literature that was about this high. And it had projects that I'd never heard of in it even. Anyway, but there had been clubs starting in Greensboro over the years, and sometimes the leaders would ask me to help them, and I'd go to a meeting too. I really wasn't interested. It just seems like the way they were done was the leader would have the meetings in the schoolhouse after school, and they would just lecture the kids. The kids had to sit in a row and listen to something that's pretty boring for a long time. And so we decided that wasn't going to work. None of the clubs seemed to last very long. So we decided to gotta have fun, and so we decided that we would have a fun 4-H, and if they learned something, that would be even better. And so we went camping, and we went climbing mountains, and had games and contests and everything, and it worked out pretty good. We started with a dairy club, but a lot of the guys weren't too crazy about dairying, so we shifted to, we also added gardening, poultry, and forestry and some things like that. Forestry was a good excuse to go camping. And our club was growing pretty fast. It got really a little too big for me. We had about 20 in it. And so Irwin White offered to take the dairy club, which was really great. And Henry Merrill decided to take a club to handicraft, woodworking, and so on like that. And I hope he'll tell a bit about that in a few minutes. And so that worked out good. But the club did continue to grow some, and we would have sometimes maybe 20 or so members in it. One time it got up to 30, which was far too much again. But I think we tried to get them a lot of different experiences. And one of them was to go to 4-H camp, because a lot of them had never left home before, even for a few minutes, overnight or anything. So we had one boy who was 14, and I suggested he go, and he wasn't interested, but his parents were. So they were really pushing him to go. And I agreed to take him up to camp and leave him Sunday night. And he complained all the way up. And I said that if he didn't like it, to drop me a card and I'd go pick him up. So I think he wrote the cards after we got there. I got it the next day. He said, "You told me you'd come and get me if I didn't like it, and I don't like it, I hate it." So I thought I would go up the next day, so I waited till Wednesday and I went up. And that day, the school nurse had agreed to kiss all the boys goodnight, and there was no way he'd get that boy home. That's just some of the delightful things that happen. We have an exhibit over here that shows some of the things we did. We have a scrapbook with a lot of pictures, and there are people in there you can recognize. And we it lasted for 30 years, luckily, and then the kid population in Greensboro just seemed to peter out a bit, so we had to drop it. But it was, I think, a great experience for us all. I'd like to have some of the boys in my club maybe talk a little bit about some of the things they did, if they're willing. Quite a few of them are here now.
Why don't you stand up?
Why don't they stand up?
Yeah, you all stand up.
Fern Fontaine, one of the great experiences was being from a rural area. We went to New York City, and that was quite an experience. And you know, you get to see a different culture, a different way of life, and that was an eye opener for me. And just knowing the mentorship that we had was a very positive. And 4-H was, for all of us, a very positive experience. And thank you for Lewis and for the Extension Service for having such a great program.
Thanks, Brandon. One of the things I remember about that New York trip was we took the boys over to the Palisades Park and rode on the biggest roller coaster in the year at that time. And I had two rides right together, my first and my last.
The other thing I remember is going down a one-way street the wrong way.
Yep. That created a lot of yelling, and this policeman came over and stopped me and said, Vermont, huh? He says, I know you don't have any one-way streets in Vermont, but let me tell you about New York. So he turned me around, stopped all the traffic. I started. Okay.
I'm Ray Fontaine, Fern's youngest brother and Durant's youngest brother. I enjoyed being in 4-H, doing all sorts of trips. Fighting forest fires. I can remember fighting forest fires, helping the fire department out. We had some dry years, and we'd go help them. And we did fundraising events, pulling seedlings, and always a treat afterwards. We'd go get ice cream after we made money for the club. And we just did a lot of exciting things. Forestry tour. I can remember going on a forestry tour and learning about different species of trees and seeing different parts of Vermont. All the trips, Eastern States, Montreal. Just had a good time, and we're blessed. We live even closer than most kids to Willis, so we got to do a lot of things with him, and enjoyed having him as a neighbor. And he's got a wonderful wife that supported us, and we're thankful for both of them.
Thanks, Reverend.
Ed Brochu, you mentioned in your comments that the 4-H population was starting to peter out. And I think that's probably when you decided to jump the county line into Caledonia, which is where I lived, in the Bend, closer to East Hardwick. I first met Lewis when I was 14 years old back in '64, working for Phil and Pauline Demers on the farm. And I come from a family of 6 kids. I was the only boy, so I led sort of a solitary life as the only son. And my only friends really that I associated with was the Fredets and the Mitchers, who had a farm next door to me. And they meant a lot to me at that time. And once I met Lewis, and he brought me into the 4-H fold, is when I started to bloom and develop and come out of my shell, so to speak. And he was very instrumental in helping me develop into the person that I've become today. And there are a lot of advantages of being a 4-Her. Of course, everything that we've heard so far is certainly all part of that. But public speaking skills, being able to get out there and mingle and be successful with people skills was very important. And Lewis was very instrumental for that for me. And of course, you branch out and meet new people, other 4-Hers, And that's where, as a result of that, through the junior leadership activities, we met other 4-Hers from throughout Orleans County, and that's where I met my wife, Sally, where she's at, back with her grandson. And she was a 4-H up in with a club up in Charleston area, and I always pick on her about the fact that one of the reasons I joined 4-H was because I was looking for a wife. I knew that if I got a 4-H wife, she could cook, sew, and be a good mother for my children, and she certainly has not let me down at all. And we've been married now for, it's going to be 37 years in December. And as much as I can say what I'm saying right now, I don't think that there are any words that can fully express my personal appreciation for what you've done for me.
Really, I didn't tell any of them to say that.
I'll turn it around on you, Louis. I'm Richard Champagne. I was in a 4-H club also. I always knew that Louis had a good sense of humor. He would have jokes from the old times, like, I'm a self-made man, of course, which shows the horror of unskilled labor.
One of the things we did was have 2-minute talks at the end of 4-H meetings, and the kids kind of started out hesitantly, but they gave some wonderful talks. And I remember one boy got us all excited one time as he told us about being stuck on the Ferris wheel for a long time when it broke down. But there were a lot of very interesting talks. Tom Hurst said he really learned to speak well there, and later he became a minister in 4-H, so the county 4-H program did a lot.
I'm Mario Fredette. I never learned how to speak very well, but one little story I want to tell you is I had a chance to go to Chicago on a 4-H trip. I did go to Washington, D.C., but I had a chance to go to Chicago, and that weekend we had to go to an interview at the county with the Extension Service, I believe, to accept us as a candidate. Anyway, I had a cousin that came. Thank you. That's right. I'm Dennis. I don't know if I took your place at the interview, Mario, but I did end up going to Chicago. I have to tell you a little story about that. When we were on the way back, this was in 1970. Take a bus to Montreal and an Air France jet 747 right after seeing, remember that movie there, that Air France jet that crashed? And anyway, we were getting on the plane. Bruce, Yuri, and I were there. Anyway, had a great time over there. On the way home, weather was bad. A week later, couldn't land into Burlington with the airplane. Ended up in Boston, taking a bus to Burlington, which was fine. Hey, we were having a good time. Get to Burlington in the middle of the night, dark, unloading suitcase, and I don't remember, I think my mother picked me up. Finally get home, she got to looking at the suitcase. She says, you must have been sleeping because this is not your suitcase. And it happened to be a girl that was on a trip. I opened it up and was like, is this your suitcase? But anyway, just a lot of good times. And I think one of the important things about all this too, like Louis said earlier in his presentation, he never really lectured us. He let us have fun, kind of gave us a little rope, little slack to go do stuff. Today you could never do that. We'd have been all kidnapped, the way the world's changed in the last 30, 40 years. But going to eastern states, he'd say, go ahead and set your stuff up and do what you want. He'd be off visiting, which was great because we learned to take care of it. And I think that was part of having fun, making your own decisions too. And, never a dull moment, I can tell you that.
We really were very lucky to have a very responsible club. And like he said, that Dave would come up home usually a few nights before and plan the exhibit. And, you know, the first half hour, it was just silly, and a lot of things, they come up with crazy ideas and everything. But finally, somebody would have a brilliant idea, and they'd all get together and plan it. And when they take all this stuff into, find out where it is at Eastern States and set it up. Like he said, I went off and looked at the other ones, and somebody would come along, ask them where their leader was, and they didn't know. But I didn't worry about them. They put together a good exhibit.
My name is Gerard Fontaine. I've known Louis ever since I was a little kid like that. I remember going over to his place, and I've learned a lot since then. There's so many things that I've learned that I can't explain them all, but I've learned to go help him and lead people to certain plants, stuff like that, to get them at his nursery. And with 4-H, I've helped fight forest fires, and I've also gone to the 4-H camp in Derby. And one of the greatest things that I learned there was we had rifle shooting, we used to go out camping, we had archery, and one of the fun things we used to do is to help clean up the place. We used to have clam contests. We'd be broken up in different groups, and because the clams would hurt people's feet, it would cut people's feet, so we'd have clam contests, and whoever got the most clams would win. But anyways, last year, I went to the anniversary the year before, and they don't do that anymore, so hopefully I talked to them about the contest we had, and hopefully they'll start it up again, because it was a lot of fun for us. It was a great experience. And I enjoyed a lot of people in my lives through 4-H. I went to the 2 big trips, some of the trips in Washington, D.C., and it's just so many things that I've learned that it's a never-ending experience. Thank you, Louis.
Thank you, Gerard. He didn't tell you about the time he and Richard went to Expo in Montreal, went off and got lost, and we waited for him for hours and hours. He didn't go home without him, but it was getting very
Oh, Henry.
I'd like to say one more thing. Collectively, I think responsibilities that we learned through 4-H is what's really gotten all of us to where we are. I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., and I did meet the president, shake hands with the president and the vice president. And also, at Eastern States Exposition, I did a demonstration, and Louis is right. There are many different demonstrations going on at the same time, and this particular demonstration was on chainsaw safety. So you want the crowd to be watching you, so we talked about what you're going to do. He says, you figure out how you're going to do this. So obviously you start with chainsaw, make a lot of racket, and a lot of people come see your demonstration. So I think this is what we learned from Louis. You need to be proactive, and you need to figure out ways where you can have the most effect on everybody else that's watching. And certainly that's had a big impact on my life. I am now a career center teacher, and Louis, one of the greatest things you could have done for me was given me the chance to be who I am, give me the self-confidence, and I think this is what this is all about. This is what how we improve lives, and I think it's paying forward. And I think you're paying forward for somebody must have helped you, but you certainly have helped all of us become who we are and helping others do that. So, collectively, thank you very much.
I'll just speak without the microphone. Collectively, as Vernon was mentioning, I'd like to present this plaque with this poem to Louis. I'm presenting it to Louis on behalf of our 4-H club and all of the members who are present and who are certainly not present here today. When he hangs this up in his home, everybody that reads this poem will know that it's for him, even though his name is not on it. But also, as I recite this poem, I want everybody here who has worked with children to know that this extends to you as well. It reads, 100 years from now, it will not matter what my bank account was, the sort of house I lived in, or the kind of car I drove. But the world may be different. I'm touchy. Because I was important in the life of a child. And this is the poem by Forrest Whitcraft. And I think that this would be very, very becoming for the world.
Henry, would you like to tell about your club, sir, please? Thank God we do this, folks.
I really don't have very much to say. I don't far back in my remembrance back in the late 50s and early 60s. And Louis, my kids were in Louis's group, and but they wanted some people in Louis's group that didn't want to do certain things. And the only one I can really remember about Sydney was a couple of Drown boys, and David, I guess it was, who ended up with a model railroad. Each had different things they wanted to do, and some things they could do in one afternoons the old sugar house, or the old schoolhouse, really, where we lived. And each kid was doing something different, so I was pretty busy showing them how to use a saw or hammer or nail without breaking it. It was a very interesting time, but I took it over because took into it because I always wanted somebody to show take some of these kids and do something with them. The group was getting to be pretty big there.
And your son, what was when the trip to Chicago, when he was in my club? Doug?
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah.
Both Doug and Bob were in your club, I guess, and both of them had animals.
Yeah. I know when Brennan went to Chicago, I think it was Raymond, was it Raymond?
Raymond Chicago.
Raymond went to Chicago. And he got his picture in the paper with Miss America. I don't think he remembers anything else.
I'm like the nurse at the 4-H camp. I couldn't kiss her.
It was a wonderful operation there. He got to it was pretty big. I don't know how many people you had at one time. Well, 17 or 18 people.
Added up over the 30 years, we had 181.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody here that worked with me. Most of them were gone.
Thank you, Henry.
Are you going to sing?
Oh, yeah. Do we have time?
Can I say just one other thing I remembered? When I went to Washington, D.C., we were fortunate to go to the Capitol, and I met Winston Prouty. I don't know if somebody here, I'm sure, voted for him, but I got to shake hands. I got to shake hands with him. My hand went right to his elbow. The man didn't have a thumb.
Oh.
And,
really?
You know, and I put my hand there. I'll never forget that. And I got to meet George Aiken. Well, he was there. So anyway, these trips really meant big, you know, we got to meet some really, you know, important people. And we couldn't have done it without 4-H. So, very nice.
Is it true, Louis, that your experience camping with 4-H club members around Long Pond gave the impetus to the creation of the Long Pond Preserve? Well, I wouldn't claim that. I don't know. I remember that Mr. Freeman liked to have us camp up there because that land was in dispute. And he thought if it was being used by somebody with his permission, it helped. Is that the
Yeah, I was just going to say, in the summer of one time, I think Stuart Carter and Peter Harbison went camping up at your, they were young, went camping with you, and I think they saw a bear the first time.
I think they heard one.
Heard one, that was it, but they had never, I mean, they were young, but they had never, city boys had never heard it. But I think Stuart Carter and Peter, I remember them coming back and saying,
I think they're in the picture over here that shows their club, and there were 21 boys, I think.
oh, that'll be fun to
And
see.
they all would, when they were camping, they were all very brave and started, they would spread all over the hillside. And then as you get darker and darker, they began pushing them up together.
Well, that was just very, very interesting to hear about the impact of the boys 4-H, and now Dorothy will tell us about the girls 4-H.
Our 4-H clubs always started our 4-H meetings by having the 4-H pledge and the Vermont anthem, so I think we should start that way. So if you'd all stand up, Louis, would you hold this up if anybody needs help?
Remember that?
And the 4-Hers know the motion.
I've got it in my book.
I pledge
my head to liberty, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to large service, and my health to better living. For my club, my community, and my country.
And my world.
And my world. Hey, Geigelhardt will start us off with the Vermont anthem. You have copies of it. Somehow I heard about the 4-H work that was beginning, and I remember I wanted very much to go to, have a club, go to a club, like the others apparently were doing. But this couldn't solve the problem because there were no Solved the problem because there was no clubs in my area at that time, at least not for the girls. So she told me how I could be a lone member and could do the work. She brought in the directions for it and the record blanks to fill out and all that. And I had first year of sewing. So with my grandmother's help, I was able to do years of 4-H work. And then when I heard about 4-H camps starting, and they had had one in Greensboro, so I thought that sounded like a good trip. But again, I wasn't so lucky. I teased so much that I got in trouble with my parents because and they just said no, I couldn't do it. And I never quite figured out whether it was because whether we were short of money or whether it was because they were afraid I would get homesick. Going at my history, a lot of what I have is, I'm not all roll off my mind like his, but I got it from clippings and records and things like that. And in a 1930s record book, it told about a rock and rock club being led by Thomas Forrest and a Maple Grove Busy Bee Club being led by Mrs. Archie Lamundi, with members Julie Kubas, Evelyn, and Elmer Chatney. And those clubs were soon moved over, shifted over to people living in the edge of East Grassbury. When my sister, Clara White, was old enough to go, she was luckier. She became a member of the Maple Grove Busy Bees, led by Mabel Graham at that time, and co-led by Lois Gebbe fairly soon. And in another scrapbook, I found proof that there were girls in the club that listed Alice Logan, Margaret Morris, Alice Rogers, and a little later clipping, Clara White, as winning prizes in their sewing contest. And in the 1937 program for the Orleans County 4-H Roundup, which happened every year, the Maple Grove Busy Bees, led by Lois Gebbe, and the Rocking Rock Club, led by John Gebbe, gave a skit. And they both earned 100% awards because they had all the records that come in. Clara White wrote a note about her experiences, and it gives you an idea of what the early clubs might have been like. I was in 4-H for 10 years, from 8 to 18 years of age. We started with Mabel Graham as a leader that first year and met in her house. That year we made aprons and laundry bags and so forth. The third year, we did cooking. And we learned basic facts about nutrition and rules for making such things as muffins, cakes, and pie crusts. We took hikes and field trips. I remember going to visit the hospital in Waterbury and also the state prison. We went to 4-H camp for a week at Flora Coots camp. The girls' dorms on one end and the boys on the other. We learned swimming and crafts besides teaching classes and attending classes and demonstrations. And in the evenings we had bonfires and toasted marshmallows and sat around singing. I remember going to State Week at UVM. We had classes and demonstrations again, recreation. One evening we had a moonlight ride on the Ticonderoga. In 1918, Margaret Morris and I, with that leader, Lois Gebbe, went to Eastern States Expedition in Springfield, Massachusetts. And we had made our uniforms or dresses by that time. So we wore those whenever we worked in the 4-H groups, where we answered questions and told about 4-H. We spent the time with delegates from other Vermont clubs. By last year, I remember being picked up at UVM, where I was a freshman, and we all went to a sleep out on Putnam Mountain, which is in the southern part of Vermont. In fact, it was near the Morse family that had moved from Greensboro, and the Morse girls joined in the outing, so we all went up on the mountain and slept on the ground. Some of the times I learned in 4-H was about the same thing you discussed in 2 years in high school. We exhibited our sewing and cooking products at local fairs in Barton and Lindenville. Then going on to the other clubs, the girls' club went into the 40s. But I'm not sure whether that and the Red Clover 4-H club overlapped. Mary Merrill
said the 4-H Clover Club for many years, but she says that I started the club, and we had met together after she started working with her daughter at the club. 1948, the county roundup, there's 4 clubs in Greensboro: Red Clover 4-H Club, Caspian Lake Club, and the Bend Pigtails 4-H Club, and the Teen Age Arts and Crafts. Roundup in 49, this was in the Greensboro Grange Hall. The Mall Valley Lasses Club, led by Dorothy Davis, with Helen DeMar helping her as a leader, junior leader, is named. But the Pigtails 4-H Club isn't mentioned. And from what I've heard about some of the Bend girls having pigtails, they probably was 2 clubs were put together. In 1948 and 49, Roundup programs and several pages of awards given to the clubs receiving 100% club if records were in or an honor club, and for their clubs with the best health and recreation programs. The girls, and the boys, of course, were recognized for the best officers report, secretary, treasurer, and news reporter, and for project work, homemakers, demonstrations, judging food, and sewing, including their best review. In these 2 yearly program books, 60 girls' names were listed, both from the village and the Bend area, as well as the clubs. And song sheet pages were always in the roundup programs because singing was a part of every 4-H activity. I found in the old papers Gloria Stone's 4-H secretary's book, secretary's report book in 1952. And then I put it out over there with it open to the names of the people that were in the club. There were 20 in the club that year. And she also gave reports of their meetings, including the business part of it and the work that they were doing, sewing or cooking, and the recreation, because there always was meant to be recreation in a meeting. In the 53 Roundup program, there's 44 clubs in Northeast County and 3 in Greensboro, 2 boys clubs in the 4-H Red Clover. And that was what happened. The same idea in the 54, 53, 54, and 55. But they did list the community committees. And on those were Mr. and Mrs. Robert Willey and Laura Brown in the village and Dorothy Davis in the Bend. Junior leaders played a big part in the club when they had 5 years of club work and were 15. In the roundups of the 50s, the following girls were listed as junior leaders. Jenny Sauls. Now, I hope you can put the married names on them. I didn't count them all up, so I know most of them. Jenny Sauls, Elna Hill, Frances Allen, Shirley Chapey, Dennis Allen, and Gloria Stone. They taught first-year programs and helped the leaders in many ways. Sometimes, as in the case of my daughter, Alice began the meeting when I was late because getting home from work. One junior leader, Dennis Allen Carr, cites the benefits that 4-H had for her. I joined 4-H Club at age 8 and enjoyed it. I felt my senior year in high school. I left my senior year in high school because I didn't have the time. I was a junior leader at least the last 2 years and assisted in teaching the first year cooks. One fond memory I have is going to the county meeting is when the roll call was called, each club had to get up in front and do something short. I remember Jenny Sauls, who was a junior leader, teaching us to sing to the tune of the Stars and Stripes Forever, this little ditty. Be kind to your web-footed friend, for the duck baby somebody's mother. Be kind to your friend in the swamp, or it's always cool and damp. You may think this is the end, so it is. And they got a big laugh. I remember that in my first demonstration at the county food meeting, I was scared, so I didn't say at the end, are there any questions? Because I didn't want them to ask any. I was marked down for that, but it was easier next time. This was important because later when I had to get up in front and teach my peers, when I learned when 4-H helped me, it also helped me in speaking in public. I wasn't very good in sewing, but when I began to sew for my kids and myself, the basics came back. With the help of my grandmother, I became efficient. My sister Frances remembers our sewing and crafts that we did. When we lived in Dorset, my neighbor got me to be the first-year cook. Later, when my daughter became 8, she wanted to be in 4-H, but there was no club. So I volunteered to teach cooking before her and her friends. While food cooked, we would talk about balancing our diet. I continued to be a leader until the children outgrew 4-H. I haven't found any roundup copies since 1955, but there was a scrapbook clipping of a 1963 photo of a dress review showing Margaret Wilson and Mary Merrill's Club. In the 1960s, Ida Allen and the Ben joined Dorothy Bing in the Red Clover 4-H Club. Several Ben girls joined, including the Allen daughters and the Arthur Hill girls, the Memorial girls, and maybe some others. And also there were girls from the village area in the club. The long-term leaders include Mabel Graham, Lois Gebby, Dorothy Day, Mary Merrill, Harold Smith, Dorothy Davis, and Helen Durant worked with her as a junior leader, and Ida Allen. And I may have skipped some, so if anybody knows of any others, sometime I hope you'll tell me about them, because we have an exhibit next summer and we want to get everybody in it. County agents during those years were Flora J. Coots, Alice M. Leonard, and Marion Moriarty. In the late 1950s, the Flora Coots 4-H Club was becoming inadequate for the many people that wanted to be in the program. Where plans were initiated by Marion Moriarty, and they began in 1958, with land being given, and for 2 years, the tents were used on the land about a quarter mile from the main building. The Marion Moriarty Annex was dedicated in 1962 in her memory. And today, the camp is known as the Coots Moriarty 4-H camp. 4-H clubs have had many rewards for members as they exhibited their work at Barton and Lyndonville Fair, or at least at local open meetings and town fairs. They attended state meetings and worked as a week-long one, and then got to go to Eastern States Exposition in Springfield. It is uniforms that they had made they could hand the booth. The outstanding ones were chosen to attend national meetings in Chicago and Washington, D.C. And I don't think our clubs have the records that Lewis has done. I talked with my daughter, who did go to Chicago last night, and she doesn't remember any of the girls being chosen to go to either Chicago or Washington. But maybe we skipped some of them that we should hear about. The Girls 4-H Club ended in Greensboro in the early 1970s. They had been active about 40 years, training many girls for the future. People hate to see the pub work in Greensboro stop, but the leaders were becoming burned out, and the young people becoming more and more busy in school and activities. We don't quite agree on that, do we? Jenny Sauls wrote to me, and Jenny Sauls Allen wrote to me and included a message that should be addressed to any or every 4-H leader. I am sending some of my memories that I have kept to remind me of what a wonderful experience 4-H was. As I look back, I marvel at your patience in dealing with all of us. We were lucky to have you. Of the many things you taught, learning to be a part of a team and then moving on to a leadership role was the most important. It helped me in every part of my life. I think we may have a few girls, a few people that want to speak up, but not many of us boys.
Maybe I'll just sit on Lewis's lap. No. Well, I don't know. I think there was some discrimination going on because I don't remember any trips to Washington, D.C. or Chicago We only went to Barton, and that was scary enough. To this day, when I head that direction, my blood pressure goes up and I start to get nervous, thinking about all those cooking demonstrations and the dreaded dress review. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I grew up here, but I wasn't born here. I got here as soon as I could. We moved here when I was 8, and I was a member of the 4-H for a long, long time. Then I got married, went out to the big bad world, and then we came back as soon as we could. So here we are. But 4-H had a huge impact on me. My grandmother was always good with her hands, but grandmothers have trouble teaching their granddaughters things because the granddaughters are a little stubborn sometimes. So I learned the most important thing in 4-H, and Mary Merrill taught me, and it was sewing. But I learned so much more than sewing. I am a professional quilt maker, and for the last 25 years I have traveled around the world teaching color and design to quilt makers. I also...
Those who don't know, there's one of her examples behind you.
I also got to go to the White House and meet the president because I made a quilt that they requested go into the White House craft collection. And, you know, sewing's a lot more than just stitching, and it sort of teaches you the life lessons that you need to know. And one of them was, it does matter what it looks like on the inside. I was one of those kids that I didn't care about the process. I just wanted to have it done, and I wanted it to be done fast, and I wanted it to look great. And one of the lessons I learned from 4-H is if you want it to look good, you have to do every step the right way. And that was a hard life lesson to learn. I also have vivid memories of sitting in front of a sewing machine that if I had been strong enough, I would have picked up and thrown across the room. I learned a lot of respect for mechanical things, and I learned that if you speak nicely to them and treat them well, they will reward you. And if you don't, they will get you. So now I make sure that I have about 10 sewing machines at any given time, so if one misbehaves, I can use another. But as everyone in this room has confirmed, 4-H was so important to so many of us living in an isolated rural area. It gave us a chance to get together with our friends and also to interact with older people, which is very important. For many people, sometimes the only older folks they know are their own family and their teachers. So this was a chance for us to build relationships with people outside our families, and those are still special to us today, as you can see by what's happening here. So I want to say thank you to all those women who worked with us girls, and I remember Dot, and I remember my Aunt Carol, and I still, to this day, I'm a good cook. And when I measure flour, by God, I do it the way I was taught in 4-H. I brought some things that you can look at later. It's not so much about 4-H, but it's where 4-H led me. Okay?
Don't forget, we've got one more. Yeah, let's finish what I've got here is Margaret. Margaret Wilson. She was really hard for 4-H.
You said you'd say something too. Barry was one of the leaders that presented, I don't know how many years.
About 10 years at least. I started with watching cows. Our oldest son was in 4-H, and he had a cow, and he wanted to take that cow to Martin, to the fair. And in order to go, he had to scrub his toes all around. So we tied him up to the tree, and we sat there and scrubbed with cotton for hours. And that was when I started with 4-H. Then I went into girls and sewing and so forth. It's gone a long way.
I can't follow Judy at all, but I remember Mary Merrill was my leader, and I don't know if I had any leaders, so I don't really remember. I know I've been cooking for about 8 years, and my first cooking demonstration, I had to dice potatoes, and I didn't learn to cook that way. You know, I learned to cook when Mother used her hand to dice. And so anyways, they asked me, why are you using a cutting board? And I said, because I was told I had to. So I got marked off for that. I learned what not to say in front of crowds. And in sewing, which I took for about 5 years, I learned to become very good at taking things out. And I put them back in the right way. And so I just think it was, my children didn't even know I could sew till about 5 years ago. So I guess when they were born, I stopped sewing. But I'm trying to teach them a little bit. And I wish somebody had taught them like you taught them. So it was very good for speaking. You know, it gave demonstrations. We had to go in front of crowds. And it was a very good thing. Met a lot of people there.
Any other remedies? Well, I would like a round of applause for this part of the panel, and then we'll move and the next generation will show us a new way of presenting it. So a round of applause. It's wonderful to have this and to see the history is continuing.
We had fishbowls, we had guns.
All right, well,
We had a jackknife.
my name's Louise Calderwood, and
We were better off.
I became involved with 4-H because I'm the mother of boys, but I'm very committed to leadership opportunities for girls. And I was never in 4-H as a child. I grew up with Girl Scouts. My mother was a professional Girl Scout leader all over the world, and so my experience was all Girl Scouts. But I wanted an experience where I could be working with my boys, but also have opportunities for girls. And nowadays with 4-H, we just have clubs. We don't have girls' clubs and boys' clubs. And I want you to know that we have a whole generation of boys who will make very good husbands because they're very good at sewing and very good at cooking. 4-H is, so many of the things are just the same. I think that we're still sleeping on the same mattresses at Eastern States, Lewis, that you probably slept on your very first year. And it's still all about the leaders. And Lori Courage is here today in the back row. She's one of those wonderful moms that's always there driving. Julie Brochu is another one of our moms. Stephanie Foster. It takes lots and lots of hands, as you folks all know. It's still about public speaking. These current members don't know, but when they're taking a calf into the show ring, they are learning public speaking because they need to present themselves, they need to answer questions. Yes, they go interview still for trips to Washington, D.C. and for different awards. And those are interview skills that they will use to go to college, that they will use for job interviews, and that they will use to, find dates. So all of those skills still are the same very much. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over for the members themselves to talk to you and show you some of the things that they're working on. Our slide presentation was put together by Logan Courage. Thank you very much, Logan. He was our background on the technical with all sorts of added extra effects from Carl Fontaine. Yes, Carl. Okay, so we're starting off with, who's going first today? Carl? Are you starting? So come on up, buddy. Show them you know how to do it.
Everything 4-H in Craftsbury, Vermont. Our club started in 1999. We did community service. We focus a lot on that. There are 4-H members still active in the 4-H club. And past projects is sewing. This is the beanbag for Copley Hospital, and vests for sewing too.
That's impressive.
In Eastern States, we do demonstrations, and a while ago we went camping at Mount Elmore, and it started to rain, and we were coming down the mountain, and we were all running back down.
I asked Carl, the way that we got our name is that Heather Urey, at our very first meeting, we were trying to come up with a name, and she said, well, we want to do everything. So our name's going to be Everything 4-H.
Fontaine. I've been in 4-H for almost 7 years. This is Old Home Day at Greensboro Commons. We just got done doing a parade. We have some of our dairy up there, poking their heads over the fence. They were a little shy at first. This is Regional Day. This is the Ukrainian eggs we made. We made it to State Day with this action exhibit. We were washing our calves. This is right before the state show and the dairy showing. We were getting up the rough stains and polishing them up before we go in the ring. And this is the rewarding part. Andrew and I. Andrew got grand champion and supreme champion of his class, and I'm in the show ring. Thank you, Chris. In 2005, I received an application to go to Washington, D.C. I didn't get to meet with the president, but I got to meet with our senators of Vermont. And I have a scrapbook over at our exhibit.
I am Andrew Calderwood, and I've been in 4-H since I was 8. And one of our community service projects was our pet show at the Craftsbury Community Care Center for the elders. This is actually the second one we have done. This is also the pet show. All the elders, they really like the seeing the animals. This is a community service at Laguerre's Farm Stand in July. This is a 4-H group from Pennsylvania. They came up and was staying with us for a week, and we went and we gleaned the fields at Laguerre's Farm Stand, and we took all the strawberries that we gleaned from the fields and took them to the food bank to donate for hungry people. Last year during after Hurricane Katrina, the 4-H club made a quilt that we raffled off, and we donated the money to rebuilding. This holiday season, we also had a silent auction, and we made some cookie mixes and brownie mixes, and we took that money and we donated to the Ronald McDonald House. And one of the things that 4-H has helped me with is it inspired me to also join National Holstein, which is another organization which is just dairy and cows. And that has taken me to the states, New England, and national levels. And that's been a really good experience for me. Oh, and this is another slide of public community service. This is at the Barton Fair. It's at the Youth Dairy Barn, and we are repainting it because it needs it.
Hello, my name is Doug Calderwood. I've been in 4-H for 8-9 years now. This past summer, we hooked up with a 4-H group from Pennsylvania, and they came out here for a week. They had to come up with the funding to get out here, and then once they were out here, we took care of them. We put them up at our houses and went out in Greensboro. We also went up to Montreal, and we also went to Mount Washington. Now this next summer, we will be going out there to see them for a week. And for going out there, we've made wreaths for earning money. Here we are making wreaths. We sold about 40, 50 wreaths. and it was a really good fundraiser. Also, we helped a local neighbor cleaning up her sheep fields. We were pulling thistles for her for a whole day. Also, I have gone to the Coots-Morari 4-H camp. I've gone there for 3 years in a row, I guess now, and that's a lot of fun. I've also gone up there. They've extended it off from the 4-H based stuff, and they've actually got a whole week, 3-4 days of just straight rock climbing that I've gone up there for a couple of times.
Hi, my name is Reed Cahoon. This is my 3rd year in 4-H. Some future plans that our club is